This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Salmond.
And it's a good morning from me here at Elm Row in lovely Leith Walk in Edinburgh as I wait Alex coming down from the assembly rooms to join us after a quick change of clothes, of course. But before we move to the subject of today's show, I want to tell you a little bit about another show that's happening in Glasgow on the 14th of September, one to mark 10 years since the independence referendum. And at the IMAX cinema on the evening of the 14th of September, we're going to take a look back to those wonderful days and exciting campaign days of September 2014, when the people of Scotland had the opportunity to vote for independence. So where stood we then and where stand we now? Here's a look at the poster and how to get tickets.
Well, welcome to the festival city of Edinburgh in Elm Row, outside Jolly's Restaurant, the finest Italian family restaurant in the continent of Europe, where I'll be talking over the Edinburgh festivals past and present with two keen festival goers. So between them I've chalked up over 100 festivals, and that wisdom will be distilled by Gareth Wardell, impresario, producer extraordinary, and Owen Dudley-Edwards, historian and a man who's reviewed more festival productions than any other living person on the planet. So welcome, guys, to Scotland Speaks with Salmond. Now, Owen, let's turn to you first. Give us the historical context. I mean, this is a remarkable post-war phenomenon. But how did the Edinburgh Festival originate?
1947, Europe and indeed the world devastated. Edinburgh itself, backwater of the Battle of Britain while it was on, desperately trying to retain a genteel delicacy sounding as much like the most respectable part of London as possible. Comes Glyndebourne Opera, which wants to start up again, but is fighting with the English Arts Council, and a brilliant young Scottish cultural advisor and historian, Henry Harvey Wood, said, but there are English-speaking places which are not under the English Arts Council. How about Edinburgh? Gets together with some of the locals, suggests that they can do it, uses the director of Glyndebourne, Rudolph Byng, whose first idea was they should start off with a high mass in St. Giles Cathedral. He then, since he was Austrian to start with, had to be told not only about Scotland being different from England, but about Protestantism being different from Catholicism. Despite that, they brought Glyndebourne Opera in 1947. They brought in several companies of various kinds. They attracted attention from the United States, and they attracted the attention of Queen Elizabeth, the wife of George VI, who was told, we want to revive real European culture. We want people to love each other instead of hating each other. This will be war work continued. So she came herself, she brought her husband, she brought her children, and at that point, of course, everybody wanted to go to the Edinburgh Festival. And meanwhile, the Edinburgh featured bringing again together Bruno Walter, who had been the Jewish conductor of the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra, driven out of the orchestra and out of Europe by the Nazis, now returned, brought together again with his old orchestra in 1947, a perfect symbol of the new cultural word of reunion and love, which was being started up again.
Great one. So this was a piece of serendipity, graced by royalty, which started off the Edinburgh Festival, which is, 70, 80 years later has become this.
Huge.
So, Gareth, you've been many productions at the festival. You've seen it grow over the years. Can you put your finger on what's happened?
Well, the Fringe has got out of hand, and the official festival, as they called it, the Edinburgh International Arts Festival, has atrophied, which is a shame. My hobby horse is that professional stand-up comedians are using the August festival as their August gig. And the whole point about the Fringe is it was set up for new, raw, fresh talent to get a platform. But instead, what we have now is people looking for somewhere to go and see and enjoy. They can't make up their mind because the Fringe booklet is that thick. And so they say, oh, there's a comedian I've seen on television, I'll go and see him instead. And they get 20 minutes for their £30 ticket.
But surely it's still, anything comes and anything goes. Surely it's still possible for somebody to arrive in Edinburgh as an unknown and emerge some weeks later as a semi-celebrity. Is that not possible now?
It probably is quite possible. But what's really happening there is leave comedy to one side if you're wise. What you need to do is walk out from the side of the road into a show you've never heard of, and you may find yourself at something absolutely dazzling. You may be able to say a few things about it which give a chance to various actors in their career. You may get tons of new ideas. Obviously you'll get reworked cliches, but you'll also get originality, you'll get heart, you'll get love, and you'll see the tremendous work which all kinds of individual people are prepared to do in order to give as many people a good time as possible. Now, in a sense, comedy reduced to all that becomes a single cul-de-sac. But if you let it be a company, then you'll see marvels. And time and again, wonderful actors, companies, playwrights have made their way forward because of what has been happening here. The challenge, obviously, of working with some of the great figures who are brought in, like Ian McKellen, Derek Jacobi, John Gielgud long ago, that had mixing together, as was so frequently done, all the more encouraged by visionaries like Alan Wright, the arts editor of The Scotsman, who ensured that awards were given to new and original material and gave a real rejuvenation to culture in these.
So isn't that fair enough, Gareth? I mean, you're such an old curmudgeon about things. I mean, what Owen has balanced it out.
Exactly as he said. I walked off the pavement to this production I'd never heard of before, nor the author. But I walked off to avoid the gum on the pavement and the paving stones upside down in our capital city of this nation. But it turned out to be Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And I was amazed. I thought, who is this guy? Where does he come from? So that was one winner. I put out one of my own shows, which was, if you don't mind me talking about it.
No, please feel free.
With the National Theatre, where we set up the House of Commons, and it was a musical. The musical was set around the 1926 general strike. And we used the table, the speaker's table, for the miners' pits. And the speaker's chair was an acting area, ladders up the back for auditory stuff. And when the audience came in, they had to choose which political seat they should sit in because of their political affiliations. The people who were members of the Liberal Party were very shy, coy about doing that. But the Labour and Tory knew exactly where they wanted to sit. And the actors who played politicians of the day were among them. And they presented their arguments. It was a big success.
The interesting thing about that, of course, is that people would recognise, or many people who know anything about politics, would recognise some of the politicians of that day. You'd have Churchill, Baldwin, Maxton, Lloyd George. If you did the same thing now, nobody would know who to play.
Well, it's like me giving lectures to film students and saying, now today I'm going to show you a wonderful first film from Vittorio De Sica, Italian, called Bicycle Thieves. Who's Vittorio De Sica? They say, or I've actually heard students say, "Who's David Lean?" And he sort of, well, I may as well fold up my documents and my research and just go home. Yeah, the Arts Festival is great. It's starved of funds, but we need a Scotland that is autonomous again, so we can keep everything we earn and we can spend it on ourselves. And that includes an arts festival where we welcome everyone. My delight was to see Nicola Bernadetti become the director, because a lot of people patronised her as, oh, first female. That didn't really occur to me. What occurred to me was she was the first Scot.
So the first Scottish female was Nicola Benedetti to direct the Edinburgh International Festival. What did you think of that? We're a big supporter.
Above all, the morning. Yes, she's the first Scot. Yes, she's the first woman, but she's the first performer to become director of the Edinburgh Festival. And it has taken us from 1947 to now to create that situation. And with the accident on performance, and as she does so much looking at a younger generation still, again, an interview with her on the leading political programme of the day, in fact, Laura Koensberg, ending up with her interviewing Nicola Benedetti, who ends the programme by giving a beautiful solo performance on her beloved violin. That's a future for us, and a great inspiration for it too. That's what we ought to be ourselves, learning what we can from the world, giving what we can to the world, recognising to the full extent cosmopolitanism along with nationalism, but above all thinking in terms of what the young have to do, what they can do to carry things on from us. And Nicola Benedetti could not be a better symbol, and she may well would prove one of the best directors we have ever had.
The productions she's invited this year, Alex, are good. All of them. They're interesting. I'm not sure how experimental they are, but the only misstep in my view is that the celebrity to give the key speech this year at the festival is one Gordon Brown, hapless Gordon, and he's talking about peace, tranquility and equality among the nations, but somehow he can't manage to actually offer that to Scotland. He's never even visited the Scottish Parliament. He won't even deign to go near it. So it's one production I won't be attending.
Well, I mean, at least they delivered the speech. Let's put it that way. How different does, I mean, you're both residents of this great city. How different does Edinburgh feel in the 3 weeks of the festival than other times? I mean, is a totally different atmosphere? Is this the kind of international real capital of the arts that you'd want all of the time? And how different is the feel of Edinburgh?
Well, I'm half Irish and half Sicilian, so to me the people who are here now give me a sense of freedom, that I'm actually intermingling with Europe, Europeans and some Americans. Unfortunately, our English oppressors decided that we didn't deserve to be in the EU and they wouldn't listen to us. So I'm delighted that Europeans will come here, even if so many of us can't quite get it together to go over there.
And Owen, I mean, you're wholly Irish, and but of course Scotland's favourite adopted Scot. So how different is Edinburgh for the festival?
Well, enormously, because when the festival started out, it really was a very careful, couth, respectable, somewhat miserably respectable. Yes, we had Hugh MacDiarmid and several other great poets, but a few poets are not enough to make a gigantic festival. Yet it happened, and the effect of the festival has been to civilise Edinburgh as well as civilising the world. It makes a tremendous difference. It means a constant awareness that there are infinite possibilities in our own history as well as in reflection of the world itself. And constantly finding in the stream of visitors from so many places whether these are actors, performers, critics even, the book festival, etc., gives infinite possibilities. And so we are a far greater city as a result, a far more human city as a result, and a far more cultural city, and of course as such have been a landmark and an inspiration for festivals across the world.
There's the Jazz Festival as well, Alex, and the Film Festival. The directors of the Film Festival made this odd decision some years back of taking it away to other dates, but they brought it back within the festival.
Yeah, well, I mean, they thought they were being eclipsed by the festival because, you know, that's just part of the game.
Here, you know?
But, you know, when I was First Minister, I tried to, my first thought was, you know, you have the period of the festival and then there's great things happen and then they're kind of lost in the desert air. So I had the international fund that we introduced to take the leading prize-winning, award-winning productions, however it's defined, internationally. I mean, the Black Watch was the first of these, for example. And they haven't really followed through, in my opinion, as they should, in terms of trying to get a lasting impact from each festival. Because in these festivals, something great happens. Lots of miserable things happen as well. Lots of dreadful productions and all the rest of it. But I don't think a festival goes by without something really special happening. It always struck me as you should make sure the special thing is seen again and again and again, and not just leave it to kind of osmosis or natural forces. There's a way to do that. I mean, you know, it struck me like, you know, at Christmas, you can be guaranteed, if you're not very careful, to turn on the telly and you'll see the tattoo being replayed at Christmas. But you turn on the telly and in vain will you look for one of the great productions that actually took place in the festival.
Yes, but Alex, what you're pointing out to there is something rather different, which is the media have declined and trivialised very badly. We can say that the Edinburgh Festival has enabled Edinburgh to find a new maturity as well as a new youth. But at the same time, you can see there was at an earlier stage when you had much more print. Yes, the newspapers were politically pretty inept, but they were very good artistically, and so much of this has vanished. And similarly, the soundbite culture has meant that so little is being said of value. It has to be, one point which should be made is the book festival, arising from the Edinburgh Festival, has given a level of permanence here, so people going back to books. And of course, the very fact that the festival itself emerged with much closer associations with students and universities. Here, of course, Gordon Brown's great work as rector of Edinburgh University did so much to galvanise the students and give them at least a culturally revolutionary force.
Right, now if we bring this conversation with the two old heads to an end here, I'm going to ask you first, Owen Dudley-Edwards, historian, man who's been to more festivals than most folk have had hot dinners. Your favourite thing of all time about Edinburgh Festival, and secondly, one great thing that could be done to make things even better.
Naturally, the unforgettable moment for me was when my play Hare and Burke was put on in 1994, beginning with the Bedlam Theatre being put on by the Edinburgh students. The Bedlam Theatre where the great Edinburgh poet Robert Ferguson died when it was indeed a bedlam. Then I had 17 ghosts, all of whom had been murdered by Burke and Hare, taking the audience across the road from the Bedlam to Greyfriars Kirkyard, the second part of the play happening there, and then the audiences at various stages being drawn in. Indeed, the same graveyard was used when they put on Macbeth, and they used the crowd waiting for the tattoo in order to be the crowd at Macbeth's coronation. Endless improvisation, great fun, and as much real moral content as you can comfortably administer.
Of course, Burke and Hare were an example of great Scottish-Irish cooperation, as they say.
Yes, well, that was why I found myself here trying to do what I could to assist in the education and being in my turn educated by the Scots. And after all, Burke and Hare had contributed 16 or 17 corpses to further the education of Scotland, which was at that point the greatest medical school in the world.
Now, can you top that? Now, that's what I want to know, Gareth. Can you top, what was the greatest thing you ever saw, and what should be done to make the Edinburgh Festival even better?
Well, to me, the greatest revelation was the three estates. You know, this history of Scotland, which encompassed almost every Scottish actor I'd ever seen or actually met, directed by a Scot, and in a declamatory style. And I didn't even know that play existed until that day, and that was a turning point for me. Where are the Scots plays? I mean, I went to Glasgow University and attended the drama department, where one of the lecturers said, the Scots don't write plays. They're not any good at writing plays. Her name was MacDonald. But we're very good at song and poetry.
If you had a special section, you could call it for a poetry, you could call it a flighting. Yeah. Why don't we have an annual flighting at the Edinburgh Festival?
Well, I try my hand at poetry now and again, but I tell you what Edinburgh's missing. It doesn't have a national art gallery devoted to indigenous artists, painters, printmakers and sculptors. Now people say, oh, we do. We've got at least 2 or 3. Well, no, they're there for international art. They occasionally will bring in a Scottish artist, but they won't promote them very much. So we actually need a gallery absolutely devoted to recent and contemporary Scottish art. That's missing.
Well, I'm a pragmatist, of course, so I think what the festival needs is cheaper accommodation and better transport. That's what to make it even greater.
But if the while I think on thee, dear friend, all losses are restored and sorrows end.
Well, that boy can do an odd stanza or two, can he not?
Very nice, yeah.
Thank you so much, Owen Dudley-Edwards and Gareth Wardell, 2 wise heads on Edinburgh Festivals past and present.
Water is life, but not all water is equal. Our water ionizer restructures and alkalizes water for optimum hydration and detoxification, recreating the planet's ultimate water sources, found in lightning-struck lakes and newly melted icebergs. H2 Pure Source. Change your water. Change your life.
Now, last week's show we discussed Julian Assange, a topic that wasn't much discussed because of the general election campaign, and Alex spoke to campaigner extraordinaire and human rights activist and former UK ambassador Craig Murray.
Now, remind us of how Julian Assange chose to release the information, and what were in your opinion, the main pieces of information that adds to our knowledge and perhaps our scepticism of Western liberal democracies and their activities?
I think, of course, the piece of information people always remember, the individual piece, which is most widely recalled, is the collateral murder video, where you have the two Reuters journalists who were killed by a United States helicopter, which also then shot up and killed the people who came to try to rescue them, including a good Samaritan passing in a van with two children in the van, which was shot up. And I can't recall, but I believe one of the children was killed. And that shocked people because the callous nature of the killings and the utter indifference as to whether these people were civilians, whether they were journalists, whether they were children, of the commander of the helicopter and his control, with whom the recording of the interaction between them, it made people realize the horror of war and what really happens, and that all the nonsense we had been fed about surgical strikes and carefully targeted and no civilian casualties was all complete and utter lies.
And here's what you had to say about last week's show. Geronimo says, "So glad we have people like Craig Murray on the side of Scotland and our fight for freedom. For Scotland, keep the faith." Ken Coote says hi to Craig Murray, a stalwart. Heather says, "This was so excellent, thank you so much. Much respect to you both." Maria Herman says, "Thank you, first time listener." Dee Rogers says, "Great show, Alex, we'll definitely be tuning in every Saturday from now on." And finally, Anastar says, "I'm happy to find your channel. Julian Assange and brilliant columnist Craig Murray are two of the smartest men on the planet." Thank you very much indeed for your tweets, messages and emails. Please do keep them coming in. Now over to Alex, who's going to give his final thoughts on the Edinburgh Festival season.
Well, on today's show, we've had over 100 years of experience of the Edinburgh International Festival from Gareth Wardell and Owen Dudley-Edwards. What should we do about the festival? The answer is nothing at all. The festival's enormous success has grown year by year, exponentially since 1947. Therefore, we should let things go as they're going. Let the Fringe take over the official festival, let everybody come and anything goes. It's the way to do things. It's the most magnificent success story, and the last thing you should do is trying to change it. I'm really pleased that in terms of the official festival, that Nicola Benedetti is the first Scot, the first woman, the first performer to grace the festival as director. That's a great thing. Keep doing things like that. The Fringe should keep expanding. The things that should be done are the practical stuff. Let's do something about the accommodation in Edinburgh. It's far too much, costs far too much, restricts the number of people that can come. That should be done, and of course you can do things about it. As to public transport, let more people come into the city and get out of the city. That can be done as well with just practical innovation. Every child in Scotland, every school child should be brought to the festival every single year. Be a memorable event for the rest of their lives. It'll do a lot of good. And all that government has to do is the practical things. Don't try to run the festival, don't try to influence the festival. Just try and make sure that the practical things are run right. And let every artist, every production and every performer bloom in the international festival city of Edinburgh.
And with that, we come to the end of this week's show, but we couldn't quite say goodbye without introducing you to the man behind Jolly's, the restaurant here, Vito. Of course, this restaurant fed us, didn't it, Alex, in 2017 when we did Alex Salmond Unleashed at the festival, and last year when we did the Eyes Have It. And when we bring the Eyes Have It back next year, we'll be eating here again. But for today, Vito has hosted us, hasn't he?
Thank you very much indeed.
Vito, do you make a lot of money at all these festival goers?
Definitely.
Enough
Good
said.
on them.
And now, folks, Vito has made us an offer we can't refuse inside Jolly's. the finest Italian family restaurant in Europe.
So if you haven't eaten here with the lovely Vito and his amazing staff, make sure you do. It's in the heart of Edinburgh here at Elmroe.
You can eat before the football.
From all of us here at Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond and Alex's usual jokes and trying to have the last word, it's goodbye from all of us, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
See you then.
Bye.
This is an exciting time in Scotland's story, and understanding our past will help us determine our future. And when Scotland's voice is heard, it charts the way forward. This is Scotland Speaks with Alex Salmond.